Deuteronomy chapter 28, the blessings of obedience. And it shall come to pass, if thou shalt hearken diligently unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe and to do all his commandments, which I command thee this day, that the Lord thy God will set thee on high above all nations of the earth. And all these blessings shall come on thee and overtake thee, if thou shalt hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy God. Blessed shalt thou be in the city, and blessed shalt thou be in the field. Blessed shall be the fruit of thy body, and the fruit of thy ground, and the fruit of thy cattle, the increase of thy kind, and the flocks of thy sheep. Blessed shall be thy basket and thy store. Blessed shalt thou be when thou comest in, and blessed shalt thou be when thou goest out. The Lord shall cause thine enemies that rise up against thee to be smitten before thy face. They shall come out against thee one way, and flee before thee 7 ways. The Lord shall command the blessing upon thee in thy storehouses, and in all that thou settest thine hand unto. And he shall bless thee in the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee. The Lord shall establish thee an holy people unto himself, as he hath sworn unto thee, if thou shalt keep the commandments of the Lord thy God, and walk in his ways. And all people of the earth shall see that thou art called by the name of the Lord, and they shall be afraid of thee. And the Lord shall make thee plenteous in goods, in the fruit of thy body, and in the fruit of thy cattle, and in the fruit of thy ground, in the land which the Lord sware unto thy fathers to give thee. The Lord shall open unto thee his good treasure, the heaven to give the rain unto thy land in his season, and to bless all the work of thine hand. And thou shalt lend unto many nations, and thou shalt not borrow. And the Lord shall make thee the head, and not the tail. And thou shalt be above only, and thou shalt not be beneath, if that thou hearken unto the commandments of the Lord thy God, which I command thee this day, to observe and to do them. And thou shalt not go aside from any of the words which I command thee this day, to the right hand or to the left, to go after other gods to serve them. Shema Yasharala Ahaya, Alahaya Nawa Ahaya Akkad. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord. Shema Yasharala Ahaya, Alahaya Nawa Ahaya Akkad. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord. Shema Yasharala Ahaya, Alahaya Nawa Ahaya Akkad. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord.
Zephaniah 2:1 in the Bible said that you need to gather yourselves together, O nation after Zion. The so-called minorities in this world today, you are the true Hebrew Israelites of the scriptures. When we say Yasha Allah, it's telling our people that we need to rise up and overcome and come together and endure this time of tribulation. Yeah, right. Wow. You out here tripping because you're rich, doing your body go. No money, turn the lights on. What about the blind that can't see until you shine open his eyes for? Too deep in your stresses. This here gonna be your lesson. You was right there, but you backslid and get mixed out in that place there. I'd have been there before. I'd have been there before. Came back to the Most High and he took us over there. See, they tried to kill us all. But when the Bible still standing, they can't stop the prophecies. We came back to the commandments. To my brothers and sisters, I just complaining about this, about that, to the point of bang. To the words we just don't seem to get the picture. How about them brothers that went through it in the scriptures? What about Job? Really open the wounds. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Through it all, they had to stay calm. Yes, we are What's that? Chastise who we love, bro. So I love that. Haters gonna hate. Police mud, so we mud back. By the way, while you looking, come and get your drugs back. My kinfolk, Isaac, my kinfolk, Jacob, kinfolk, Shia, my kinfolk. Never gonna give up. Yasha Laquan. Man, stick your fist up. Yasha Laquan. 2 years ago, homie, I was splashed out. A couple bucks inside the bank, and I was cashed out. To the point I could've really brought the mask out and put the furniture on and grabbed some cash and lashed out. Around this time, I had the truth for about 9 months. I was in the word every day for 9 months. My faith was stronger than the bitter herb I had once. I knew the Father would deliver, and it was at once. $3.2, all I had. I skipped breakfast so I wouldn't break fast. I kept his word and gave me everything I asked. And now it's money in the bank. That's a glass shot. That's real life and it's real talk. That's a real walk. With the word of God and the truth away. With the birds down and the evil away. But you all show the same thing. All of them doing the same thing. The same people, the same problem with the same passion. Same thing. Change you want. What's that? What's that? Chastise who we love, bro. So I love that. Haters gonna hate. All these mugs, so we mug back. By the way, while you looking, come and get your drugs back. My kinfolk, Isaac, my kinfolk, Jacob, kinfolk, Shia, my kinfolk. Never gonna give up. Yasha Laquan. Yo, man, stick your fist up. Yasha Laquan. We used to the struggle, used to the hustle. Long arm of the law, we used to the muscle. People hate you, but used to just love you. Back on the wall, used to the scuffle. If you proud, holla loud. But Yasha Laquan. We used to a muscle, used to the color. Strange enough, that's what it rained for. A little mud, but in the sun shining, and we stand tall. They was mad at Yeshaya, had him killed, so it's automatic that we ride for his will. Switch gear, it's a standard. Commands is demanded. We children of Israel, and that is so apparent. Survivor like Job, mixed with Moses and Aaron. Go through a tight spot and pop up on you like a fairy. Man, we ride the long way like a limo. We're supposed to see another day, but we ain't get the memo. New world order, it's just a little demo. And thus we survive through the storm like Eno.
Alright, so first and foremost, give all the glory and praise to the Most High, our highest, our highest. Thank you for joining us on this Shabbat, the Holy Day. Babylon, we're going to know Babylon. We're going to go this thing inside and out on Babylon and the Babylonian captivity. So first, I'm going to say peace. So Father is scattered throughout the four corners of the earth. So off from those who are following the law, the man is going like the blood lineage of the 12 tribes, but we still are following the law of faith. The man is thus never the surname of Israel. You're not a Gentile. Alright? So you have the King James Bible, pen and paper, and the Israeli to learn. Babylonian captivity. Long time coming, it's blessings, maybe, I don't know. But at the same time, we got a lot of stuff to cover. Okay? We're going to learn some things on the way to learning some things. Alright, so we get through the holy days, Purim, we're going to make holy days, because we're in the plan. We have a holy conversation on those days. Focus on each one of those things. We'll start at chapter 12, and we are teaching and lessons. There's also the holy review this year. Purim, we're going to teach on the 19th. On the 20th, we're going to teach on something else. Normally we do the year of Jubilee, so maybe we'll do something different this year.
He already said that with that prayer. We're consecrating with our real time.
So wow. March.
I wonder about it.
Sure.
So why is thank you, and I wonder about you also.
Oh.
She said, so I thank you so much.
March, Passover. Passover, the big one. March, well, one of the big ones. March 8th and 9th. We have a holy conversation on that day. We learn about the Passover on March 9th. The spring holy day is March 8th and 9th. Feast of Unleavened Bread. We're talking Shabbat. Feast of Unleavened Bread starts March 10th, and we go through March 17th. All the leaven in your house is to be removed, right? Amongst other things, we'll have a teaching on March 10th on the Feast of Unleavened Bread. Let's get started with Jeremiah 25 and verse 12. We're going to get an understanding of Babylon. But before we get an understanding of Babylon, we have to understand what happened between the bridge between Assyria and Babylon. Right? Assyria was world power, so let's get an understanding about Assyria and Babylon. Jeremiah 25:12 is the priesthood, the emphasis of what we're going to be teaching on today. Let's read that.
Jeremiah chapter 25, verse 12. And it shall come to pass, when 70 years are come, that I will punish the king of Babylon, and that nation, says the Lord, for their iniquity, and the land of the Chaldeans, and will make it a perpetual desolation.
All right, it's a perpetual desolation, all right? We're going to get an understanding of what happened with Assyria and Babylon. Let me realize something new. There were two great Eastern empires before, which all the old states, Syria and Palestine. We learned their history, partly from the Bible, and we have a few other outside resources we're going to go to. We're going to have a few other resources that we're going to go to also in learning about this captivity, but also in learning about what happened in between Assyria and Babylon. Babylonia, or Shinar, is the country on the lower course of the Euphrates and the Tigris River. So we all know that the Euphrates and the Tigris, and let's go together, they end up. Where we end up, we have Babylon, and we have what is called now, what is called Iraq. Okay? And the two cities of Babylon was Babylon. Right? Read Genesis 10.
Genesis chapter 10, verse 10. And the beginning of his kingdom was Babel, and Erech, and Akkad, and Chaldea, in the land of Shinar.
Right. So Assyria or Assur occupies the Tigris region. So they pretty much occupy the north. They occupy the north. Babylon, or the Babylonians occupied the south. All right? And in the center was the Tigris, where Nineveh stood. So Babylon was towards the south, that was Babylonian. Nineveh was towards the north, Assyria. And they were always rivals, but they always had common civilization. One thing that was common about them was their language. They both spoke Semitic, right? In the southern country, the people who spoke Semitic, seem to have a different or another race from whom they got a lot of things as far as the religion, the culture. They started to write in the uniform system. They started to develop their own language. In that process of time, Assyria built themselves up, and they became stronger and stronger and stronger. And in the later part of the 12th century, then that's when Tiglath-Pileser came on. In Tiglath-Pileser, there was different Tiglath-Pilesers throughout history. All right, that was kind of like their title, like Pharaoh. Yeah. Right. Like I was with it. Okay. Uniform? No, it's not Q. T-U-N-E-I-F-O-R-M. T-U-N-E-I-F-O-R-M. Oh, it was their writing. Okay? All right, so, as can't count you to say their name. As Rezapal was the first conqueror of Assyria, and he consolidated his kingdom throughout the country, where the two rivers, the borders of Babylon, and he took tribute from the western princes of Phoenicia. His successor then was Ptolemy III. In 1854 BC, he defeated the Syrian state, he defeated Damascus, he took tribute, and in 842 he took tribute from Jacob. After this lesson, next week we're going to do a lesson on the kings of Israel, the kings of Judah, the prophets, because you'll get an understanding as far as these captivity. And why are we going the kings and the prophets after Babylon is because there were no more kings after Babylon. No more Egypt, no more Israelite kings after Babylon. And so that is the perfect time to do a teaching on the kings of Judah, all of them. All the kings of Judah, all the kings of Israel, all the prophets who associated with those kings. And maybe we'll learn something new on the way to stuff. There's one story between David and Saul, which we should know through that as well. All right. So then, David and Saul. Saul and David, yes, it was. His son. Briefly. Very briefly. Right? Okay. 854. He's conquering the world. 852. Contributed from Jacob, king of Israel. God. The labor of flesh, the fire came in. Number 38. Contributed from the Damascus of Syria. Let's see 2 Kings 15 and 19. So Assyria started to gain strength and they gained power. Babylon was off to the side. They did not have the military might or the military strength to come up against the Assyrians. Remember I teach it last week, the Assyrians were a very ruthless people. Babylon is going to do them one day, but there's something that we're going to learn about the Babylonian captivity that maybe we have not learned, maybe we have, maybe we know. Maybe just a recap. There's something in the Babylonian captivity that did not happen in the Assyrian captivity. So, 3:17-15.
2 Kings chapter 15, verse 19. At 4, the king of Assyria came against the land, and Manasseh gave Pharaoh 1,000 talents of silver. And his hand might be with them to confirm the kingdom of his hand.
Correct. All right, so full potential material. Now, the question should be doing a hand. That's a good fact. Right? Anybody know? talk about it. Okay? We'll talk about it. Anybody know? You know, he's the son of the king of Israel. Let's move on. 734. They revolted in a war, and it was the destruction of Babylon. I'm sorry, not the destruction of Babylon, the destruction of Damascus. Then Naphtali and Gilead were depopulated. During 17:15, 6 down to verse 29.
2 Kings chapter 15, verse 29. In the days of Pekah, king of Israel, came king of Assyria, and took Ion and Abel, Beth Maacah, and Manoah, and Kadesh, and Hazor, and Gilead, and Galilee.
Those are all things that Hebrews 25 was conquered.
All the land of Naphtali, and carried the captive to Assyria.
And all of Naphtali, they put them in captivity and carried them to Assyria. And the acceptance of the Assyrians was certainly being watched by Judah when Assyria was coming and taking captive. But there was a reason why Judah was not taken captive. There's a big reason why. And that, let's go to 2 Kings 17 and 4. Okay. So, there's a reason why Judah was not taken captive by Assyria. And the reason why Judah was not taken captive by Assyria because the kings of Judah were doing right in the eyes of the Lord. And in fact, when we go through the kings list, you're going to find that the majority of the Judah kings did right in the eyes of the Lord. The majority of the Israelite kings to the north did evil in the sight of the Lord. However, there was a change. And there's one thing to blame, like we said, not one thing to blame. It's kind of bad to say. When we said there was one king who was the one who was at fault for the Assyrian captivity, and we pinpointed that was Solomon, there is one king who was at fault for Judah's captivity into Babylon. Okay, we're going to get them later on today. Right? So, there was no independent state between Assyria and Egypt. Egypt had no power to catch anybody, right? But Israel, whenever they were in problems, they would always go back to their captive Egypt. Isaiah prophesied, and we'll get that later. And I'm going way ahead of myself. Let me just bring it back. Israel plays our God, and the Ethiopian, let's go to 2 Kings 17.
When you put it with that, so go back to, is that the help?
Correct. They would always go to Egypt for help. But in fact, they should have wanted them on top. 2 Kings 17:4.
2 Kings chapter 17, verse 4. And the king of Assyria found conspiracy among them. For he had sent messages to So, king of Egypt, and brought no present to the king of Assyria, as he had done years by year. Therefore the king of Assyria set him up and bound him.
So he made himself lord over all of Egypt, the king of Assyria, and began to start a revolt in Syria, which involved with Palestine and Samaria. And that happened during Shalmaneser, during the first years of his reign. The siege of Samaria began by Shalmaneser. Read verses 36 and 17. Let's read verses 3 verse 3, and then 5 and 6.
2 Kings chapter 17, verse 3. Against them came up Shalmaneser, king of Assyria, and Hosea became his servant and gave him flesh. Verse 5. Then the king of Assyria came up throughout all the land and went up to Samaria and besieged it 3 years. In the 9th year of Hoshea, the king of Assyria took Samaria and carried Israel away into Assyria and placed them in Halah and in Hebron by the river of Jordan and in the cities of the Medes.
All right, so what we're going to learn is that when we're going to recap it. Last week, when we talked about the Assyrian captivity, we talked about how the Assyrians and with their language and everything, all the records that they kept, on how they tried to annihilate Israel. It's a little different with Babylon. But it was a lot different with Babylon. Right? Assyria wanted 4 bloodthirsty. Babylon was a little different. We're going to see. All this was concluded by Sargon, who was from 722 to 705. He was a prince. He went and he destroyed Egypt, maintained the border. Then there was an uprising in Philistine, with the Philistines in about 711, which is right there. But once more, the Egyptians failed again in the time of peace. Once again, Israel was looking for Egypt, and Egypt failed again. Let's go to Isaiah 20, and we're going to start at verse 1. Let's read that.
Isaiah chapter 20, verse 1. In the year that Sargon came unto Ashdod, which was Sargon the king of Assyria,
Sargon, the king of Assyria, go ahead.
and fought against Ashdod and took. At the same time spake the Lord by Isaiah son of Amoz, saying, Go, and loose the sackcloth from off thy loins, and put off thy shoes from thy foot, and he did so, walking naked and barefoot.
Naked and barefoot, right? This is Isaiah the prophet. Verse 3.
And the Lord said, like as my servant Isaiah hath walked naked and barefoot 3 years for a sign and wonder upon Egypt and upon Ethiopia, so shall the king of Assyria manipulate the Egyptians quickly.
Yes, you got it. Go ahead.
And the Ethiopians captive, young and old, naked and barefoot, even with their buttocks uncovered to the shame of Egypt.
Buttocks uncovered to the shame of Egypt, right? Verse 5.
And they shall be afraid and ashamed of Ethiopia, their expectation, and of Egypt, their glory.
Verse 6.
And the inhabitants of this isle shall say in that day, Behold, such is our expectation. Whether we plead for help to be delivered from the king of Assyria, and how shall we escape?
How shall we deliver? Shall we be delivered from the king of Assyria? How shall we escape? We're going to go over the second Kings 20. So Sargon's death, after Sargon's death, a revolt happened through the entire empire. And Merodach-Baladan of Babylon sought alliances even in Judea, right? So now this is the start of Babylon. 2 Kings 20, and we're going to read verses 9 through 14. 2 Kings 20, and we're going to read verses 9 through 14. All right? Let's read that.
2 Kings chapter 20, verse 9. And Isaiah said, This sign shalt thou have of the Lord, that the Lord will do the thing that he hath spoken. Shall the shadow go forth to the breeze, or go back to the breeze? And Hezekiah answered, It is a light thing for the shadow to go down to the breeze. Nay, so let the shadow return backward to the breeze. And Isaiah the prophet cried to the Lord, and he brought the shadow 10 degrees backward, by which it had gone down to the Isle of Ahaz. At that time, Baladan, the son of Baladan, king of Babylon, sent letters and presents unto Hezekiah. For he had heard that Hezekiah had been sick.
All right, so this is the king of Babylon. This was way before Nebuchadnezzar, right? So he's kind of getting uneasy with Judea because they're going to go against Assyria, right? Verse 13.
And Hezekiah hearkened unto them, and shewed them all the house of his precious things.
Oh, big mistake. Sorry, Hezekiah. Big mistake. Keep reading.
The silver and the gold, and the spices and the precious ointment, and all the house of his armor, and all that was found in his treasures. There was nothing in his house, nor in all his dominions, and Hezekiah took them not.
All right, so big mistake by Hezekiah. He didn't know. He didn't know. Hezekiah. The road to down, the ladder down. All right, but what Hezekiah did is not wrong, right? When the kings make allegiance, that's what they did. However, there was something about, and like I said, there was something about this particular situation, because later on we know that the Babylonians came in and put us into captivity. But it wasn't Hezekiah's doing. Remember, Hezekiah did what was right in the eyes of the Lord. But somebody did. Verse 14.
Then came Isaiah the prophet unto King Hezekiah, and said unto him, What said these men? And from whence came they unto you? And Hezekiah said, They have come from a far country, even from Babylon.
Right? So Isaiah the prophet said, wait a minute, who are you guys? And why are you showing them all the way? Right? Why are you showing them everything? Okay? We'll hold that for a second. If the Egyptians have been active, and Syria might have been ruined, but they encouraged rebels. Right? So Shirabah had time to crush every single uprising that was going on. Once more, the center of the revolt was lies in Philistine. And it was supported by Hezekiah, Judea. But without rebels, without warriors, they could do nothing without peace. And the siege of Ekron was formed before the Egyptian army ever even appeared. Now all of Palestine is now executed in Syria. All of Palestine now is taken over. And Judah, or Judea, is next. But Hezekiah was not going to surrender his stronghold. He had confidence in what Isaiah was telling him, that a great disaster was going to fall upon Nineveh and all of his hosts. Isaiah was prophesying to Hezekiah, and Hezekiah listened to what Isaiah was prophesying to him. So the Assyrians, even if they attempted to try to take over Judea, they weren't going to succeed. I hope you're following me right now. 2 Kings 19 and 35.
Second Kings, chapter 19, verse 35.
Go ahead.
And it came to pass that night that the angel of the Lord went out and smote in the camp of the Assyrians, and hundred fourscore and 5,000. And when they arose early in the morning, behold, they were all dead corpses.
That's because Hezekiah listened to what Isaiah said. Hezekiah did not go and make tribute with Egypt. Had he made tribute with Egypt, then all hell would have broke loose in Judea. Assyria would have took captive not only the northern country, which they already did, but the southern country as well. Yeah.
So he would have listened like he did with Egypt, like Israel did, a couple 100 years earlier. They would have went through the same thing as Israel, right?
Correct. But at the same time, like I said, Hezekiah is doing what he's supposed to do. Don't follow their God. He was obliged, he obligated to, the kingdom of Assyria was obligated to return to Nineveh. that in 2 Kings 19, 37.
2 Kings, chapter 19, verse 37. And it came to pass, as he was worshiping in the house of Israel, his God, that Abimelech and Sarazer, his son, smote him with the sword, and they escaped into the land of Armenia. And that son Hagar, his son, reigned in his stead.
So from this date, from the Bible, in the Bible, from this time on, the Bible has little to nothing to say about the Assyrians at this point. But their power was still mighty under Aphrodite, who invaded, conquered Egypt, and he did all that. There was a Babylonian king by the name of Cyrus, and he began to start to put pressure on Assyria, right? So the previous Babylonian king died, then the new king died. And he started to put pressure on Assyria because he knew that in order for me to conquer the world, I got to conquer Assyria. So he did a great invasion with nomads, and he overran Asia as far as Palestine. And that's in Jeremiah 4 and 6. We're not going to read that 2 verses to read that. Read that on your own time. That's what Jeremiah was trying to allude to. This diversion was temporary, and it left Assyria exhausted. Then the Medes advanced with the Babylonians. The Medes got with the Babylonians, and then the Babylonians fell. Nineveh fell, and that was about 670 BC. Assyria proper and the northern provinces fell into the hands of the Medes, while Syria was laid by the next Babylonian king, Nabopolassar. Okay. And he was the king of Babylon, right? So the Medes, they started, we always think that the Medes happened after the Babylonians, after Babylon. But the Medes were in Persia, was involved in the destruction of Assyria with Babylon. Okay, this is this topic.
The Babylon able to take over Judah because of the Jehoiakim or before that?
Before Jehoiakim. We're going to show who it was. It was before Jehoiakim. Okay. On this side, however, another claimant for the empire had appeared. We're going to get that a little later. Another claimant for the empire appeared in the person of King Necho of Egypt. Let's see that in 2 Kings 23. And we're going to read verses 29 to 35. Necho, king of Egypt, who in his last days of Nineveh advanced through Palestine to the Euphrates. Okay? And let's see that in 2 Kings 23, verses 29 to 35.
2 Kings, chapter 23, verse 29. And his days Pharaoh Necho, king of Egypt, went up against the king of Assyria to the river Euphrates. And King Josiah went against him, and he slew him at Megiddo, when he had seen him.
That's right. This is Sam Revival, and we're going to speak more on him next week. 30.
And his servants carried him in a chariot dead from Megiddo, and brought him to Jerusalem, and buried him in his own sepulchre. And the people of the land took Jehoahaz, the son of Josiah, and anointed him and made him king in his father's stead. Jehoahaz was 23 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 3 months in Jerusalem. And his mother's name was Manuka, the daughter of Jeremiah of Memphis. And he did that which was evil in the sight of the Lord, according to all that his father had done.
Right, that's Jeremiah, and so verse 21 is not the prophet Jeremiah. Okay, that's different Jeremiah. Yes. raised.
Most of these Israelites,
Oh, he was from a sister.
okay, but, however, this is our topic, but if King George was black, was that man Judah had taken over, or was that Judah coming?
He's King George. I don't know what King George is. We're talking about King James. Yes, King James was man of color. Right?
Are you talking about King James?
Right. Because King George, I don't know who that is. I mean, I'm sure there was a King George, but that was after we were displaced out of India. Right? So I'm sure there's a King George somewhere in that wicked lineage of false kings of East India. But I don't know who King George is. Verse 32. No, 33.
And Pharaoh Necho put him in bed at Riblah in the land of Ammon, that he might not reign in Jerusalem, and put him into a tribute of 100 talents of silver and a talent of gold. And Pharaoh Necho made Eliakim, the son of Josiah, king in the room of Josiah's father, and turned his name to Jehoiakim, and he took Jehoiakim away. And he came to Egypt and died there. Verse 35. And Jehoiakim gave the silver and the gold to Pharaoh, when he passed away to get the money according to the commandment of Pharaoh. He was glad with the silver and the gold of the people of the land, of everyone according to his taxation, to give it unto Pharaoh Necho.
Right. So now this is Jehoiakim, who is now paying tribute to Pharaoh. Right? Later on, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, sent his son Nebuchadnezzar in 605, and he killed Necho in a battle. Right? Jeremiah 46:2. Yes, King James was what was the question?
If King James is black,
Right?
was that man Judah, Judah,
No, his name was not
had
Judah.
taken over, or was that Judah?
No, that was not Judah's land. So, Judah is really Judah. That's the name of the land. The people were Judah. So, England was not Judah or Judea. England was English. It was English. It was not Judea. Judea was in Israel. Yes, it was Judah in the land, yes. Was Judah the main ruler? No. Was Judah the main population? No.
So, King James, he ruled over what?
England, Ireland, and Scotland. One king he ruled over England, Ireland, and Scotland.
But that was not like our land.
No, it was not our land. Our land is Israel. And remember, that was in the 1500s. It was in the 1500s. Because we were long out of Israel by that time. We were in Africa at that time. And we were being transported from Africa to the Americas. A couple of hundred years ago.
They showed Judah, and they had on a different, different place there.
Right. The stuff that they want in Europe.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it was
So the kingdom probably was in the 1600s when the slavery started.
right, so when the slavery started.
When did slavery start? First slave.
African American film.
First slave of America. When was that?
And what was that? You know that was too late. Oh, yeah, it was one of those, I don't know the story, but I know the name. Because I'm actually writing this thing, it's crazy. It's crazy.
Because Leslie wasn't happen when he was alive.
Oh, if he was alive, well, that's what they're going to say, we have 16 left.
16 what? Because it happened right after he died. And right after he died, that's when they took over the country.
You know what I'm saying? Yes, I understand that. I know that. Okay. So they have the other using some Israelite and scattered when I saw and were eating God and the people there were not Israelites.
Yeah, they were. They were in Ireland, they were in Scotland, they were in England, they were in Europe. Yeah. We did not just say, and see, that's the one thing that people that are missing is, because everybody talks about 70 AD. Not too many people talk about 135 AD, where a lot of our people went from Israel through the Mediterranean up to Europe. So, and we're going to do that when we do our teaching on 70 and 135 AD. And we're going to show that our people did migrate through the Mediterranean Sea and they went up into Europe.
Look, yes, King James is Hebrew. He was an Israelite, he was from the tribe of Judah.
Right. Okay? We're in Jeremiah 46 and 2. Let's read Jeremiah 46 and 2. Now, before we get Jeremiah 46 and 2, let me just backtrack a little bit. Necho was the king of Egypt, and Nebuchadnezzar sent his son, Nebuchadnezzar, to kill him. Read that in Jeremiah 46.
Jeremiah chapter 46, verse 2. Against Egypt, against the army of Pharaoh Necho, king of Egypt, which was by the river Euphrates in Carchemish, which Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, smote in the fourth year of Jehoiakim, the son of Uzziah, king of Judah.
To understand the book of Jeremiah, understand that the book of Jeremiah is all out of place. It is scattered off, just like the Bible is not chronologically in order. The book of Jeremiah is not in chronological order. It's got the captivity in the beginning chapters. It's got what happened before the captivity towards the end. It's mixed up. Why is that? Because you have to know who you are. It's mixed up. So you have to be able to sit down and read through the book of Jeremiah to understand it, that Jeremiah is just like the Bible. The books are out of order. The death of Nebuchadnezzar checked the progress of Babylon. But Nebuchadnezzar advanced his years, and as soon as he confirmed in his kingdom that it was close to the end of the century, that's when he took over Syria and he took over Egypt. Then Palestine was still impatient. And they were still under Egypt's yoke, unfortunately. We're in Jeremiah, let's go to Jeremiah 44 and verse 30. Jeremiah 44 and 30. All right, let's read that.
Jeremiah chapter 44, verse 30. Thus says the Lord, behold, I will give Pharaoh Hophah, king of Egypt, into the hand of his enemies, and into the hand of them that seek his life. As I gave Zedekiah, king of Judah, into the hand of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, his enemies that saw his life.
Right, so rebels was offered help, but Nebuchadnezzar hand was too strong. At this time, Babylon was too strong for anybody. Jerusalem was destroyed on a second revolt. A lot of people don't even understand that there were two times where Babylon went into Jerusalem. The second time was the end all. Right? Let's go also Ezekiel 29 and 18. So we get an idea of what went on between Assyria, what happened to the Assyrian empire, and the start of the Babylonian empire. And we're going to do the same thing when we go from Babylon to Persia. We're going to see from Babylon what happened and what made Persia heightened. And it's not what you think. I mean, Persia was not just given. Babylon was just not given to Persia. There were some things that happened prior to that Persia overtaking Babylon. And then we're going to see the same thing with Persia and Greece. What happened there? And then we're going to see kind of the same thing with Greece and Rome. What happened there? So we get a full understanding. Because history, unfortunately, college history, high school history, they don't teach it. And they won't teach it. They will not teach it in any high school curriculum, or not even in the college curriculum. They will not teach it. Okay? Ezekiel 29 and 18. Let's read.
Ezekiel chapter 29, verse 18. Son of man, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, caused the daughters to serve a great service against Tyre. Every head was made bald, and every shoulder was healed. Yet had he no waist, nor his arms for Tyre, but the service that he had served against it.
So then, not only the things, yeah.
What does that mean? That he had this,
What does that used to do? Yeah. What does that used to do?
oh. So what about the children?
They're just children.
Oh. The Babylon was the ruling power on the earth.
So there was one time in history where Babylon was the ruling power of the earth. We talk about Nimrod.
No, he's talking about when, well, maybe that's, you gotta clear it up. Because you have to think that was 2 times when
Right, it
Babylon
was two
came
times that Babylon came into Israel, or came into Greece. It was twice, it wasn't once. There were 2 times where they came in. Right, the first time they came in, and that was, we'll get to that. I don't know, I just want to say that.
So, but that's the story with Jeremiah about the coming from.
The first time Jeremiah,
Yeah, he was in
the first time the prophet was born again. Remember her? In the second Kings, she was born again. Babylon came in, and I'm not going to speak that. I'm born again myself. Babylon came in the first time, and that's when the younger son of Jehoiakim was taken. Jehoiakim was taken and renamed, took him off to Babylon. Then the second time, 18 or 19 years later, Nebuchadnezzar came in again. Well, that's when he took over and destroyed the temple.
He said that, and I was talking about Nimrod.
Yeah, Nimrod, I don't know if they were a world power though. I don't think they were a world power. Nimrod just had control over Babylon. He was just control over Babylon, and everyone in the known world at that time, so Egypt was the main power too. Egypt was the main power. Babylon was Nimrod's domain, and everybody went to Nimrod throughout the known world. Egypt was a power. Egypt was an up and coming power. Babylon, when Babylon did not conquer the whole known world. And Nimrod was the power. Nimrod was just everyone who was around Nimrod was affiliated with him, or they paid tribute to him. Egypt did not pay tribute to Babylon, to Nimrod. Egypt was an up-and-coming power at that time. They weren't a world power, but they were an up-and-coming power. Babylon was not a world power 2 times. It was only a world power of 1. Okay? Let's go Daniel 4:30. So, Egypt is humble, but Egypt was never permanently enslaved by the Babylonians. Never. That is a translator's concern. When he became in reign, his concern was not going and conquering nations. He had conquered all the known nations, but he did not enslave all the known nations. That's the difference between how Babylon operated and how Assyria operated. Assyria went to kill everybody and make everybody slaves. Babylon did not do that. Babylon went and conquered the world, but they did not enslave everybody. Nebuchadnezzar's primary concern was to make Babylon beautiful, was to bring the 7 wonders of the world, right? Isn't one of them in Babylon? The hanging garden? Right. So that was Nebuchadnezzar's sole purpose, was to strengthen the wall outside, to make the tower or the temple of Baal the biggest temple in the world, and to have the hanging garden. That was his goal. Because he said, I got the whole world. I don't have to make them captive. I don't have to make them slaves. We got your one verse.
Daniel, chapter 4, verse 30.
Mm-hmm.
The king spake and said, is not this great Babylon, and I have built for the house of the kingdom by the might of my power, and for the honor of my name.
That was Nebuchadnezzar's sole purpose. His sole purpose was to build Babylon, make Babylon a great and wonderful city. That was his purpose. Because he had conquered everybody who he could possibly conquer.
So that's why when he went into Egypt, Israel, and the Babylonian captivity, the first time he took like small people, you know what I mean?
Yeah, we're going to read that too. So he took certain people with him, but he did something with those people too.
So he conquered like the known
The known world. Yeah, at that time, the 10 tribes, they were already in the Americas at that time. Because it only took them a year and a half to come out of the Syrian captivity. Those who went, or those who were righteous, those are the ones, and I believe you read that last week, those are the ones who went into the Americas. Okay, those. Let's talk about the Babylonian captivity. The northern kingdom of Israel was full of sin. And the results were inevitable. The Assyrians came over and took them captive about 721 BC. Judah was now facing the same fate. Judah had a history of wars and treaties with neighboring countries and suffered internal turmoil within kings. 20 kings ruled Judea from the time of the separation of the 2 kingdoms until the affair. But only a few Israelite kings were righteous. These few righteous kings were the reason. In between the time of the Assyrian captivity and the Babylonian captivity, there was only a couple of righteous kings. And that was the reason why Assyria was not able to come into Judea. Yeah. Was Solomon when the second started to see no. Not Solomon. Solomon, what he did was for political advancement. He wasn't making treaties with other nations. He just wanted political advancement so that Israel could be this world power, even though he went about it the wrong way. The treaties and everything did not, and we're going to see this, and we're going to understand this, we're going to see the treaties, did not happen until much later on. Right? Let's go back into this. So after the people of Israel was taken north by the Assyrians, the people of the southern kingdom were governed by Hezekiah. Let's see Hezekiah, 2 Kings 18 and 3.
2 Kings, chapter 18, verse 3.
Mm-hmm.
And he did that which was right in the sight of the Lord, according to all that David his father did.
He did all that was right. He removed the high places, he removed idolatry, he stopped prostitution, he removed all the images of all the false gods. Hezekiah did all of that. Get down to verse 6 and read verse 6 and 7.
Verse 6. For he clave to the Lord, and departed not from following him, but kept his commandments, which the Lord commanded Moses.
Mm-hmm.
And the Lord was with him, and he prospered whithersoever he went forth. And he rebelled against the king of Assyria, and served him not.
So when Hezekiah was leaning towards the Most High, the king of Assyria, and he read, and that's why I wanted to emphasize on how powerful the Assyrians were. Even everything that the Assyrians did could not stand against the Most High. And it could not stand against the Most High because of the fact that Hezekiah was doing everything in the eyes of the Lord. Aid, the miraculous aid that the Most High was giving Hezekiah, spared from the powerful Assyrian army. At his death, this good and righteous king, Judah immediately forgot, and the nation was inevitably going to captivity. And one king, Manasseh, Hezekiah's 12-year-old son, took the throne, and he did everything that was evil. Go to 2 Kings 21 and 9. But he did anything miraculous that. He was placed on the throne. Read 2 Kings 21 and 9.
2 Kings, chapter 21, verse 9. But they hearkened not, and Manasseh seduced them to do more evil against the nations whom the Lord destroyed before the children of Israel.
Mm-hmm. So later on, not only was Manasseh, not only he built high places, he built roads, set up graven images, he also built Moloch. And
That's what Moloch comes from, Manasseh.
well, later, he built an image of Moloch, right? He built an image, and he took his own son and sacrificed his own son to Moloch. Okay? Right.
So if you king you talking about enemies, that's all.
Right. This is the start of that. Right. Right. Then Josiah comes on. Josiah is righteous, and he's trying to restore everything that Manasseh did. Right? Let's go to 2 Kings 23 and 27. So we're going to understand this in more detail next week. If held in captivity. Read 2 Kings 23 and 27.
2 Kings chapter 23, verse 27. And the Lord said, I will remove Judah also out of my sight, as I have removed Israel. I will cast out the Israel which I have chosen, and the house of which I said, my name shall be there.
All right, so now Hezekiah is dead. Manasseh is now dead. Josiah is trying to restore, but it's too late at that point. Just before captivity, Ezekiel compared Judah, Judea, to Samaria. Another name in Samaria, we all know that's another name for the Lord's kingdom. And to her younger sister, Sodom, which was Ezekiel's son. The people of Judea continued to follow pagan practices, pagan idolatrous practices. Their heathen neighbors, they started doing everything that was wrong in the eyes of the Lord instead of following the commandments of a high one. Even Josiah, in all his splendor, in all his glory, could not stop them from doing what they were doing. We're going to see that. I got this from a book. It's called Always with the Bible, from the National Street House. And yeah, this is the Bible. Always with the Bible, from the National Street House, 5,235. Okay. The strong Egyptian practice in Jerusalem has introduced the animal worship of the Nile Valley, and has even turned a large room in the temple unto a chapel for its service. So even in Father's temple, they had a room that they would have the animal sacrifices that they did in Egypt. They would do it in a separate room in the temple. The sun worship of the East has also found its footing in its court. And we know that because in Ezekiel 8, it kind of tells us that what they were doing in the temple. Right? The sun worship of the East has found also its footing in the court. In the very holiest spot of the sanctuary, about 25 men, presumably representative of the Most High, of the high priest, stood with their backs to the temple, the open sign of apostasy, and worship the rising sun, their faces turned to the east. And we all know that in Ezekiel 8 chapter. We're going to go to Jeremiah 32 to 35. So they offered their children in sacrifice to the god Moloch. Jeremiah 32 and 35. Let's read it.
Jeremiah chapter 32, verse 35. And they built the high places of Baal, which are in the valley of the son of Hinnom, to cause their sons and their daughters to pass the fire of the Molech, which I commanded them not. Neither came it unto my mind that they should do this abomination, to cause Judah to sin.
The Most High did not sin. The Slayer did not sin. The sin was due something so yes. And so have the sons and daughters pass through the fire. Now, if you're new to this channel and you don't understand what is going on, what they did is they made a bronze statue of Moloch, but they hollowed the inside of it so that they can mold this statue up. And they would take their naked children and throw them on a good 3,000 degree heat island. The arms would be like this. and it was a dog head or something, and he would sit like this, and the inside of the section was hollow, but it was made out of ground or grass. And they would take it and they would keep this thing up. And to appease Moloch, they would throw their naked children onto this island, onto the arms and burn them alive.
To get more power, whatever they were.
Whatever they were dealing with. And the Most High said, I never thought, it never came to my mind that Israel, that Judea would do this. Now, that was on the top. But even he said, I never would have thought that they would do this. That's the fact that came against Judea and her neighbors with two armies. One sent the Syria to Sidon, the cities of Phoenicia, for their rebellion, and the other he sent to Jerusalem. The siege lasted about 18 months, during which the people of Jerusalem were stoning each other. Getting penalties. Lamentation 4. Not all the Lamentations is depressing. Not all of it. Lamentation 4, we're going to read verses 8 to 10.
Lamentations, chapter 4, verse 8. Their visage is blacker than the coal. They are not young in the street. Their skin cleaves to their bones. It is withered. It has become like a stick.
So Babylon, the army is outside of Jerusalem, outside of Judea, and there's no supplies going in and out. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? Verse 9.
They that be slain with the sword are better than they that be slain with husbands. For these glide away, stricken food for the want of the fruits of the field. The hands of the pitiful women have shattered their own children. And for their meat is the destruction of the daughter of my
They were eating their own kids. Starving means to cook. And they were eating their own children. Finally, the defenses broke down, the Babylonians became victorious. King Zedekiah, last king of Judea, fled. He was caught. Saw his children get murdered. Right? We might think that's a movie, but we got actual scripture to show that. The city was burned. The temple of Solomon was destroyed. Judea came to an end. According to Jeremiah, look at Jeremiah 39. According to Jeremiah, the Babylonians took the remnant of the people captive to Babylon, except for some people who were left behind under Babylon rule. Right? So there's some people who were left behind. Jeremiah 39, we're going to read verses 8 to 10. All right, let's read.
Jeremiah chapter 39, verse 8. And the Chaldeans burned the king's house and the houses of the people with fire and break down the walls of.
Now, y'all understand Chaldeans and Babylonians are the same. Chaldeans and Babylonians are the same. There's 70. There's not a difference. That's verse 9.
Then Nebuchadnezzar, the captain of the guard, carried away the captives in Babylon, the remnant of the people that remained in the city, and those that fell away, that fell to him, with the rest of the people that remained. But Nebuchadnezzar, the captain of the guard, left of the poor of the people, which had nothing, in the land of Judah, and gave them vineyards and fields at the same time.
Right? So the people who were left behind in Judea, they were able to get some vineyards and fields, right? Nebuchadnezzar was able to control Judea by keeping the leaders in captivity. And some few people were allowed to remain behind. for over 800 years, scripture says from Moses, was used for more, special occasions such as the Sabbath and the reading. And we'll get to that when we talk about the religious aspect in Babylon. Let's go to 2 Kings 22. And we're going to read verses 8 to 13.
Second Kings, chapter 22, verse 8. And Hilkiah the high priest said unto Shaphan the scribe, I have found the book of the law in the house of the Lord. And Hilkiah gave the book to Shaphan, and he read. And Shaphan the scribe came to the king, and brought the king word again, and said, Thy servants have gathered the money that was found in the house, and have delivered it into the hand of them that do work, and have the oversight of the house of the Lord. And Shaphan the scribe to the king, saying, Hilkiah the priest has delivered me a book. And Shaphan read it before the king. And it came to pass, when the king had heard the words of the book of the law, that he rent his clothes.
What words did he read?
Keep going. And the king commanded Hilkiah the priest, and Ahikam, the son of Shaphan, and Achbor, the son of Hilkiah, and Shaphan the scribe, and Ahaziah, the servant of the king, saying, Go ye, inquire of the Lord for me, and for the people, and for all Judah, concerning the words of this book that is found. For great is the wrath of the Lord that is kindled against us, because our fathers are not hearkening to the words of his book. You according unto all that is written concerning us.
Verse 14.
So Hilkiah the priest, and Ahikam, and Achbor, and Shaphan, and Ahaziah went unto Huldah the prophet, the wife of Shallum, the son of Tikva, the son of Harmai, keeper of the wardrobe. Now she dwelt in Jerusalem in the tower, and they communed with her.
All right, we all know who Huldah is. He's the one who starts prophesying to the elders and saying we're going to be taken into captivity. But the book that they were reading, Leviticus. And we're going to show that later. Okay? Deportation and exile of the Israelites. Let's talk about that. The Babylonian exile is name generally given to the deportation and exile of the Israelites. Okay, by Nebuchadnezzar II. The Bible gives us the internal cause of the captivity because Judah was in sin. They failed to remove the idols. They failed to listen to the prophetic warning that they were getting from all the prophets. And they also rebelled against Babylon. They did all that. While the Israelites were in Babylon, they did not stop it. And that's one thing that's different from Assyria. In Assyria, the northern tribes suffered. They were persecuted. There was no persecution in Babylon. And we're going to show scripture. The Israelites, when they were in Babylon, because remember, Nebuchadnezzar, once again, he wasn't interested in destroying people. He was interested in building his city up, making his city the mecca of philosophy, and educating. That's what his goal was. So Babylon, at the time we were in siege, there was some killing. Okay, let's not get it twisted. Prior to when Nebuchadnezzar was in power, when the Israelites were going into captivity, oh yeah, he killed some people. He had to, because there were some rebellious people, mostly the leadership. So he had to kill people. But while the 70 years, while they're in exile, they lived a prosperous life in Babylon. Okay? King Jehoiakim destroyed the writings of the prophet of Jeremiah, who opposed the king's alliance with Egypt. Jeremiah was outspoken against the alliance that Egypt, that Jehoiakim had with Egypt. He said, don't depend on Egypt, depend on the Most High. The first deportation of Judea occurred in 597 BC. And as a result of conquest of Jerusalem by Nebuchadnezzar II. The purpose of this action was to punish King Josiah's son Jehoiakim because he was aligned, or he was allied with Egypt in rebellion against Babylon. Are you following me so far? 2 Kings 24 and 1. This ain't all this is in the Bible, huh? 2 Kings 24 and 1. Second Kings 24 and 1. Okay? Let's read.
2 Kings, chapter 24, verse 1. In his days, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came up, and Jehoiakim became his servant 2 years. Then he turned and rebelled against him.
Against Babylon's forces, Jehoiakim repented. No territory except for Jerusalem when he died in that cause. So then his son comes up, Jehoiakim, who is also called Genoa, continued to resist Babylon. But he was forced to surrender no more than 3 months. Nebuchadnezzar ordered him and the top citizens of Judea to be deported together with the valuable treasures of the palace. 2 Kings 24, right? You read verse 1? Yeah. Let's go, we're going to read 2, we're going to stop at 16. Okay? Let's see this.
2 Kings, chapter 24, verse 2. And the Lord sent against them bands of the Chaldees, and bands of the Syrians, and bands of the Moabites, and bands of the children of Ammon, and sent them against Judah to destroy, according to the word of the Lord, which he spake by his servants the prophets. Surely at the command of the Lord came this upon Judah, to remove them out of his sight for the sins of Manasseh, according to all that he did. And also for the innocent blood that he shed, for he filled Jerusalem with innocent blood, which the Lord would not pardon. Now the rest of the acts of Jehoiakim and all that he did, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Judah? So Jehoiakim slept with his fathers, and Jehoiakim his son reigned in his stead. Verse 7. And the king of Egypt came not again any more out of his land, for the king of Babylon had taken from the river of Egypt unto the river Euphrates all that pertained to the king of Egypt. Jehoiakim was 18 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned in Jerusalem 3 months. And his mother's name was Nehushta, the daughter of the son of Jerusalem. And he did that which was evil in the sight of the Lord, according to all that his father had done. At that time, the servants of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came up against Jerusalem, and the city was besieged. Verse 11. And Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came against the city, and the servants did besiege it.
Now, this is the first of Babylon coming into Judea.
And Jehoiakim, the king of Judah, went out to the king of Babylon, brothers, and his servants, and his princes, and his officers. And the king of Babylon took them in the 8th year of his reign. And he carried out them to all the treasures of the house of the Lord, and the treasures of the king's house, and cut in pieces all the vessels of gold Solomon, king of Israel, had made in the temple of the Lord, as the Lord had said.
So if you start the movie Jeremiah, and you come up and after it, because the Bible is where, as the end, that they're taking all the treasures out. That didn't happen at the end. It happened in the first captivity. It happened in the first, not the first captivity, in the first invasion. That's when they took the things out of the temple. Go ahead.
Verse 14. And he carried away all Jerusalem, and all the princes, and all the mighty men of valor, even 10,000 captives, and all the craftsmen and smiths, none remained, save for the poor short of the people of the land.
Right, so when we get into the numbers, we have a little section in the numbers, you can conflict because Jeremiah said something different. First Kings and Second Kings said something different about the numbers. So we're going to see what the actual numbers were, people being led into captivity. Let's just finish this whole chapter. Go ahead.
And he carried away the horses to Babylon, and the king's mothers, and the king's wives, and his officers, and the mighty of the land. Those carried into captivity from Jerusalem to Babylon. And all the men of might, even 7,000, and craftsmen, and smiths, 1,000. All that was strong and apt for war, even them the king of Babylon brought as captives to Babylon.
And that would make sense. Because if you're going to take over a country, you're going to take the ones who are the leaders of this country out. You're going to take those who are soldiers and warriors. You're going to take them out of the country. Keep going.
Verse 17. And the king of Babylon made Zedekiah his father's brother king instead, and changed his name to Zedekiah. Zedekiah was 21 years old when he began to reign. He reigned 11 years in Jerusalem, and his mother's name was Elishama, the daughter of Jeremiah of Libnah. And he died, and he did that which was evil in the sight of the Lord, according to all that the Lord had done. Verse 20. For through the anger of the Lord it came to pass in Jerusalem and Judah, until he had cast them out from his presence. And Zedekiah rebelled against the king of Babylon.
Right. So among those captives was Ezekiel, the prophet. Out of the first group, Ezekiel was one of the prophets. And you know that, Ezekiel was one of the captives. Yes. No, there's one Jeremiah. That Jeremiah is not the Jeremiah prophet. Yeah, that's not Jeremiah the prophet. So Ezekiel was taken in captivity in the first band of captivity. Jeremiah, we know, remained in Jerusalem. He was not ever taken into captivity. Jeremiah advised those who were taken to Babylon to be there peacefully. And don't think about coming back for at least 70 years. Right? They were even pray for Nebuchadnezzar, for he was the Most High's instrument for punishing Judah and their sins. And Jeremiah was telling them, pray for him because he's the one that the Most High is using to destroy you. So he strongly urged those in Jerusalem to be patient and not to resist against the word, not to resist against, not to rebel. Right? Yes.
So Jeremiah and Ezekiel were alive at the same time.
Yes.
And Jeremiah
And
was
David.
not together, which I was still in Israel, or Judah, and Ezekiel was in Babylon.
Right, but Ezekiel didn't start until a little later. But yes, they were in Babylon. Well, Ezekiel was in Babylon. Jeremiah was in Jerusalem. Daniel was also alive at this time. But Daniel was taken captive also. And so Daniel was also there. So, back up, Trust like it says you do. So Jeremiah was telling them not to oppose Jerusalem, or not to oppose Babylon. But he had a false prophet, which was Jeremiah 28, who was telling them and urging Zedekiah to have faith in the Most High, that the Most High was going to deliver Judea out of its oppressors. And you all know what I'm talking about. And I'm out. Right? You're going to go Jeremiah 25, and I'm sorry, Jeremiah 28. And we're going to read 5 to 17. If you have questions, feel free to put your questions on the chat. Jeremiah 28. And we're going to read verses 5 and 17. Let's read. Jeremiah chapter 28, verse 5. Then the prophet Jeremiah said unto the prophet Hananiah in the presence of the priest, and in the presence of all the people that stood in the house of the Lord. Even the prophet Jeremiah said, Amen. The Lord is shown. The Lord performs thy words which thou hast prophesied, to bring in the message of the Lord's house, and all that is carried away captive from Babylon into this place. Nevertheless, hear thou now this word that I speak in thine ears, and in the ears of all the people. So Hananiah started off by saying that the Most High is going to deliver Israel, right? Kind of right. Jeremiah says what you have said is true, but listen to this. So we're going to go say, the prophets that have been before me and before thee of old prophesied both against many countries and against great kingdoms of war and of evil and of pestilence. The prophet will prophesy of peace, when the word of the prophet shall come to pass, then shall the prophet be known that the Lord hath truly sent him. Then Hananiah the prophet took the yoke from off the prophet Jeremiah's neck and brake. And Hananiah spake in the presence of all the people, saying, Thus saith the Lord, even so will I break the yoke of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, from the neck of our nation, within the space of 2 full years. And the prophet Jeremiah went his way. Prophet Jeremiah went his way. Verse 12. Then the word of the Lord came unto Jeremiah the prophet. After that, Hananiah the prophet had broken the yoke from off the neck of the prophet Jeremiah, saying, Go and tell Hananiah, saying, Thus saith the Lord, Thou hast broken the yokes of wood, but thou shalt make for them yokes of iron. Right? So see now also here comes the real prophecy. Right? Hananiah, emotional, breaking the yoke off of Jeremiah's neck. You know, the king is looking, the high priests are looking, and they're seeing it. And, you know, Zedekiah is looking. He took stuff and, yes, Hananiah, clapping. Jeremiah didn't go. Jeremiah left. Jeremiah walked out. The Most High called Jeremiah back and said, Go back yesterday. And he tells them what he told them in verse 13, but then there's more. Read 14. For thus says the Lord of hosts, the power of Israel, I have put a yoke of iron upon the neck of all these nations, that they may serve Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, and they shall serve him. And I have given him the beasts of the field also. Then said the prophet Jeremiah to Hananiah the prophet, Hear now, Hananiah, the Lord hath not sent thee, but thou makest this people to trust in a lie. This is where we can say that if there's someone who is bringing forth false doctrine, false lies, you can confront that person. Jeremiah did just that. And of course, the Most High told him to do just that. Verse 16. Therefore, thus saith the Lord,
Behold, I will cast thee from off the face of the earth. This year thou shalt die, because thou hast taught rebellion against the Lord. So Hananiah the prophet died the same year in 7 months. Died the same year in the 7th month. Left them to the wild, the sons giving them message from the eternal that they to. Jeremiah's advice was ultimately go unheard. Hezekiah wouldn't listen to Jeremiah, just like the Lord wouldn't listen. Let's go to Ezekiel 17 and 13.
Well, what the message is not appealing to his flesh.
Well,
That's why he was looking at the other guy and that's his blood. So, and you figure that's how fast it is to get in people in the church. You're going to get that hot, you're going to get that hard.
emotion. I'm sure when Hezekiah broke, I'm sorry, not Hezekiah, when Hananiah broke that yoke off of Jeremiah's neck, he had to be emotional.
Everybody even has started to talk to him.
Everybody's in an uproar. Yeah. Who is this Jeremiah? Right? Ezekiel 17, 19, read it. Ezekiel chapter 17, verse 13. And has taken the king's seed and made a covenant with him, and has taken an oath with him. He has also taken the mighty of the land, and taken the mighty of the land. None of the things are reaching the end of you person who this patient stays of where it is. Right? Because he has seized Jerusalem once. And Zedekiah, through his disobedience, Nebuchadnezzar's patience was very thin with Zedekiah. And in 587, he starts to send his forces back to Jerusalem. Zedekiah and his court attempted to run, but they got caught. As punishment, well, let me see that later on. In the same year, let's go back to page 25. So, as Persian, he reports to witness the death of his son, and then he was blind. Of course, we see that in the movie Jeremiah, but let's get back to scripture. After this, the king was taken in chains to Babylon. That same year, while they watched his spiritual life in troubled vision from Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar's captives supervised the destruction and the burning of the temple, the royal palace, and virtually the entire city. So we're going to read 2 Kings, the 25th chapter. We're going to read that. Is this in your page? So let's just read it. 2 Kings, chapter 25, verse 1. And it came to pass, in the 9th year of his reign, in the 10th month, in the 10th day of the month, that Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, came and on his host against Jerusalem, and pitched against it. And they built forts against it round about. And the city was besieged unto the 11th year of King Zedekiah. For the end of the 9th day of the 4th month, the famine prevailed in the city, and there was no bread for the people of the land. And the city was broken up, and all the men of war fled by night by the way of the gate between two walls, which is by the king's garden. Now the Chaldees were against the city round about, and the king went the way toward the plain. All right, so they already had the city surrounded. We have the outskirts of the city surrounded. And the people who were the leaders of the city started to escape through the wall. Verse 5. And the army of the Chaldees pursued after the king and overtook him in the plains of Jericho. And all his army was scattered from him. So they took the king and brought him up to the king of Babylon to Riblah. And they gave judgment upon him. And they slew the sons of Zedekiah before his eyes and put out the eyes of Zedekiah, bound him with fetters of brass, and carried him to Babylon. All right, so that is actually this that happened. That Zedekiah saw his sons murdered, and they said that's the last thing that you're going to see. And they put his daughters out. Verse 8. And in the 5th month, on the 7th day of the month, which is the 19th year of the king Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came Nebuchadnezzar, captain of the guard, a servant of the king of Babylon, unto Jerusalem. And he burnt the house of the Lord, and the king's house, and all the houses of Jerusalem. And every great man's house burned he with fire. And all the army of the Chaldees, that was the captain of the guard, break down the wall of Jerusalem and round about. Now the rest of the people that were left in the city, and the fugitives that fled away to the king of Babylon, with the remnant of the multitude, did Nebuchadnezzar, the captain of the guard, carry away. But the captain of the guard left the poor of the land to be fire dredgers and hunters. And the pillars of brass that were in the house of the Lord, and the bases and the brazen seas that was in the house of the Lord, did the Chaldees break in pieces, and carried the brass of them to Babylon. And the pots, and the shovels, and the snuffers, and the spoons, and all the vessels of brass wherewith they ministered, took they away. Just took everything. Now in the beginning, they took away the fine stuff. Now they're taking everything. Verse 15. And the fire pans, and the bowls, and such things as were of gold, in gold, and of silver, in silver, the captain of the guard took away. The 2 pillars, 1 piece, the 2 pillars, 1 piece, and the bases which Solomon had made for the house of the Lord, the brass of all these vessels was without weight. The height of the 1 pillar was 18 cubits, and the capital upon it was brass. And the height of the capital, 3 cubits. And the reeded work and the pomegranates upon the capital round about, all of brass, and like unto these had the second son with reeded work. So all of this was basically they're taking the temple apart. Whatever columns, whatever things that are made of brass, they're taking. Next verse, verse 18. And the captain of the guard took Dariah, the chief priest, and Zephaniah, the second priest, and the 3 keepers of the door. And out of the city he took an officer that was set over the men form. And 5 men of them that were in the king's presence, which were found in the city, and the principal tribe of the host, which mustered the people of the land. And 3 men of the people of the land that were found in the city. And Nebuchadnezzar, captain of the guard, took these, and brought them to the king of Babylon to Riblah. And the king of Babylon smote them and slew them at Riblah in the land of Hamath. So these are the second one that they get the most that this was the second group where they tried to escape and they were all killed. 22. And as for the people that remained in the land of Judah, whom Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, had left, even over them he made Gedaliah, the son of Ahikam, the son of Shaphan, ruler. And when all the captains of the army, they and their men, heard that the king of Babylon had made Gedaliah governor, they came to Gedaliah to Mizpah. 625. Verses 25. Second Kings, chapter 45, verse 27. And it came to pass in the 30th year of the captivity of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, in the 12th month, on the 7th and 20th day of the month, that evil Merodach, king of Babylon, in the year that he began to reign, did lift up the head of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, out of prison. All right, so evil Merodach follows Nebuchadnezzar. garment, and he did eat bread together before him all the days of his life. And his allowance was a continual allowance given him of the king. And then he paid for every day all the days of his life. He was an old man at that time. He was so fresh.
Well, it was just a simple part because that was also punishment from the Most High for them, or because when the other nations conquered, that's just what they do.
There was punishment from the Most High. There was not only a place of worship because Judea did not worship the Most High.
It was just said, a while ago, that they had a temple, and the people that had a home from heaven.
They had a room for animal sacrifice that they would use, that these business would do. Right. But they took apart the temple. Now, understand that they didn't take the brick. That was personal. They took away the brass that was hung the tower was like. Whatever that was brass, if the awning was made out of brass, they broke off what was around the awning and they took the awning and they rolled everything. Remember the first time, they didn't take apart the temple. They just took the items out of the temple. This time they're taking the artifacts from the temple. The pomegranates that was around the top of the temple, made of gold, they took those off. They took them off. The temple was glass temple. Yeah.
So that's then they have to have a person with bread feet or something like that.
In Babylon, or
But the Israelites, they have to go to a temple to worship.
No, they could have been something else, but the main focus is the temple. Jeremiah 34.
So when the scripture is talking about you started into the temple, and there is also the temple.
Right. So the Solomon's temple, remember, was rebuilt by Herod, by Herod. And we went through the glory of the first temple. Remember, Herod, when he rebuilt the temple, that was the third time the temple was rebuilt. Remember, the Greeks came in and destroyed it. So that was the third time. So when Messiah came on, when he went to Solomon's temple, that was what was Solomon's temple, even though it wasn't Solomon's temple. Right. The synagogue, there were synagogues in every city. Right. In Galilee, there was synagogues. And Bethlehem, they had synagogues. Jerusalem, they had synagogues. Synagogue was like a church.
So it was like a people house. I think in old pictures where I think last we had the churches and the houses, they even had where they baptized before.
Right. That was after. That was later. That's when the first churches started to be established with Peter and Paul and the people in power. They would set up churches there in people's houses. That was much later. Not much later. It was a little later after the child. Correct. They had service at the time. Right. Jeremiah 34. We're going to start at verse 1. And we're going to skip around a little bit. Go to 9. Yeah.
The two cities that Solomon had built one temple, and one that had a round hall, that were hollow, that the frontrunners was one. That is, 250, they are secret, there are secret inside of the house.
That I was so that I don't know what. I don't know if it's secret inside of
I haven't heard that.
law. I never heard of that before. So you have So information and resources, let us know. I'll do this. Right. Okay. Yeah, so this is, you know, this is what I want to say. I will be interested to see what they information is. Jeremiah 34, we're going to start at verse 1. And hold at verse 1.
Jeremiah chapter 34, verse 1. The word which came unto Jeremiah from the Lord. Nevertheless, the king of Babylon and all his armies and all the kingdoms of the earth of his dominion and all the people fought against Jerusalem and against all the cities thereof, saying, Thus says the Lord, the power of Israel, go and speak to Zedekiah king of Judah, and tell him, Thus says the Lord, Behold, I will give this city into the hand of the king of Babylon, and he shall burn it with fire, and thou shalt not escape out of his hand, but shalt surely be taken and delivered into his hand. And thine eyes shall behold the eyes of the king of Babylon, and he shall speak with thee from mouth to mouth, and thou shalt go to Babylon.
So see, Jeremiah was telling Zedekiah, this is going to happen to you. This is going to happen to you. And it happened. But Zedekiah was not hearing that. That's first.
Yet hear the word of the Lord, O Zedekiah king of Judah. Thus saith the Lord of peace. Thou shalt not die by the sword.
This is not by the sword, remember, go ahead.
But thou shalt die of peace, and with the burnings of thy fathers. The former kings which were before thee, so shall they burn odors for thee. And they will lament thee, saying, Ah, Lord, for I have pronounced the word, saith the Lord. Then Jeremiah the prophet spake all these words unto Zedekiah king of Judah and Jerusalem.
Jeremiah was very popular at this time. That's right.
When the king of Babylon's army fought against Jerusalem, and against all the cities of Judah that were left, against Lachish, and against Ezekah. For these the 10 cities remained of the cities of Judah. This is the word that came unto Jeremiah from the Lord, after that the king Zedekiah had made a covenant with all the people which were at Jerusalem, to proclaim liberty unto them. Verse 9. That every man should let his manservant and servant, and every man his maidservant, being in Hebrew or in Hebrew rest, go free, that none should serve himself of them, to wit of a Jew his brother.
There you go.
So he's today.
What's in there? Right?
So there you go.
Right? Jeremiah is telling us that all of this is going to happen. He's telling us all of this is going to happen. We're going to skip down to verse 14, and we're going to read 14 to 16.
Verse 14. At the end of the 7 years, let me know every man and his brother in Hebrew, because they showed unto me, and when he has served these 6 years, thou shalt let him go free to thee. But your fathers hearken not unto me, neither incline their ears. And you will have turned, and have done right in my sight, and proclaiming liberty to every man to his neighbor. And he has made a covenant of in the house which is called by my name.
Okay, they were not doing the years Jubilee. They were not doing the years Jubilee. They were not doing the 7 years tax. They were not doing none of it. So we're going to see something about that also. The reason why. Maybe that's what we'll keep on after we hear it. It was the same thing. The land was due at rest. 6 years they was working the land. The 7th year the land was rest. Just like on the weekly Sabbath, 6 days work and the 7 days rest. The 7-year Sabbath was the same thing. 6 years you would work the land, and on the 7th year the land would rest itself to continue to make it first. So then that 7 years, you would you would have all your crops, everything that was done, and you would have to lay to rest. Verse 16. Because, but you turn and polluted my name, and caused every man his servant, and every man his handmaid, whom he has set at liberty at their place, to return and brought them into dejection, to be unto you for servants and for handmaids. All right, let's skip down to verse 19. We're going to read 19 to 26. Jeremiah chapter 34, verse 19. The princes of Judah and the princes of Jerusalem, the eunuchs and the priests, and all the people of the land which pass between the parts of the path, I will even give them into the hand of their enemies, and into the hand of them that seek their life, and their dead bodies shall be for meat unto the fowls of the heaven, and to the beasts of the earth. And Zedekiah, king of Judah, and his princes will I give into the hand of their enemies, and into the hand of them that seek their life, and into the hand of the king of Babylon's army, which are gone up from you. Behold, I will command, saith the Lord, and cause them to return to the city, and they shall fight against it, and take it, and burn it with fire. And I will make the cities of Judah a desolation without any inhabitants. Right. Desolation without inhabitants. All right. Those were the steps that Jeremiah was bringing Jews into Babylonians as a vocal opponent of rebellion. Nebuchadnezzar appointed the collaborator Zedekiah to govern what he named the Judea. Okay. 7 months, Zedekiah was assassinated because there was another rebellion that broke out. And a lot of people escaped to Jerusalem, right? So they were captured in Babylon. Nebuchadnezzar says, okay, you're going to be now the governor. You're not going to be king. You're going to be governor today. And you're going to be governor, and I'm going to leave these people here to work the vineyard. Then they assassinated them. And a rebellion broke out between the remnant of Judah that was left in Judea. And a lot of those escaped into Egypt. And that's how Jeremiah escaped into Egypt, because he was in with that rebellion. And he was one of the ones that was running, and he escaped to Egypt. That's how Jeremiah got to Egypt. Jeremiah didn't walk to Egypt. He had to escape because there was another rebellion that was going on. Understand it?
So he shouldn't stay there and be there.
Correct.
Well, it didn't say for me that he was prophesying there.
There was no threat.
Yeah, that's when he's coming up on the journey. So the people are going to bring him. We had to come there.
So Jeremiah was not going to stay there and prophesy after this. Because there's no telling what Babylon will do with that.
Well, you need to talk to the brother and try to get it done. If you don't hear from the Lord, about your mind, after all that.
No. The numbers, right? The numbers of the people going to the captivity. One verse says this, the other verse says this. Let's go to Psalms 137. And we're going to read verse 1. The keep your Bible to Psalms 137. Psalms 137. And 137 verse 1. Right? Let's read. Psalm 137, verse 1. By the rivers of Babylon, there we sat down. Yea, we wept, we remember Zion. Alright? So the people who were taken captive into Babylon, they remembered Zion or Jerusalem, and they wept. Paul says, and go to Jeremiah 28, Jeremiah 52.
And that case, the earth is truly out of whack because they never made it.
Correct. You are absolutely correct. During the sabbatical year, we were supposed to work until the earth was 6 years. That 7th year was in fact. And we have accepted just common sense that there is a doctrine. Maybe the day was doctrine, maybe the day was David. We have to set that aside as a sin. Okay? Like I said, the Bible tries to reinstate a lot of this stuff, but the people just weren't listening to it. Go to Jeremiah 52, 28 to 30, read that.
Jeremiah chapter 52, verse 28. This is the people who Nebuchadnezzar carried away captive. In the 7th year, 3,000 Israelites and 3 and 20. In the 18th year of Nebuchadnezzar carried away captive from Jerusalem, 830 and 2 persons. Verse 30. In the 3 and 20th year of Nebuchadnezzar, Nebuchadnezzar, Adon, the captain of the guard, carried away captive of the Israelites, 740 and 5 persons. All the persons were 4,600.
Right. 4,600. Right? So that's the account of Jeremiah. However, it's likely that only the men were counted at that time. This does not include women and children, which is estimated to be somewhere about 14,000 to 18,000. Right? And we read that, I read that in 1 Kings 25. 2 Kings 24. So let's go back to 2 Kings 24, and we're going to read verses 14 and 16.
Second Kings, chapter 24, verse 14. And they carried away all the Christians, and all the princes, and all the mighty men of valor. He gave 10,000 captives, and all the craftsmen and smiths. None remained, save the poorest part of the people of the land. And he carried away Jehoiakim to Babylon, and the king's mother, and the king's wives, and his officers, and the mighty of the land. Those carried into captivity from Jerusalem to Babylon. And all the men of might, even 7,000, and craftsmen and smiths about. All that were strong and apt for war. Even then, the king of Babylon brought captives to Babylon.
Right, so this probably refers to the first captivity, or the first deportation of 500 tribes. Verse 14 gives numbers of 10,000 men, while verse 16 says about 10,000, an estimate roughly double of what Jeremiah said. Those that were deported in 507 hoped for a speedy return to their home. But they were told by Jeremiah not to do that, that you're going to get 7 years. They were encouraged by the hope of 30 prophets who among them, and then who Jeremiah and Ezekiel worked with. This was Jeremiah 29 and 29.
Jeremiah chapter 29, verse 29. And Zephaniah the priest read this letter in the ears of Jeremiah the prophet. All right, Zephaniah. All right.
We're going to go to Ezekiel 1 and 3. So although people live in the city of Babylon, it's not known whether they fell, whether they were close or whether they were scattered throughout the area. One of the places that they called was Tel Aviv, which is the city which is still there today. Let's see Ezekiel 1 and 3. And Tel Aviv was a community where we congregated in Babylon. But now we don't Tel Aviv was major city in, I believe like that. Ezekiel 1 and 3, read that. Ezekiel chapter 1, verse 3. And whether the Lord came expressly as Ezekiel's tree, the son of Buzi, in the land of the Chaldeans by the river Chabar, and the hand of the Lord was there upon him. That area that was part one of Ezekiel 1 3, that's Chaldean. That's exactly what Chaldean is today. So the exile was under world attack. They still were able to do the things that they were doing in Jerusalem. Those who kept the law of the land. Let's skip over to Jeremiah 24, verses 5 and 7. So the exiles, they were permitted to farm, they were permitted to marry, they were permitted to raise families, they were permitted to buy property, to gain wealth. Let's see that though. Jeremiah 24 and 5. Read that. Jeremiah chapter 24, verse 5. Thus says the Lord, the flower of Israel, like these good figs, so will I acknowledge them that are carried away captive of you. But I have sent out of this place into the land of the Chaldeans for their good. Right? So the good people who were taken to exile, I'm going to make sure, well, let's see the verse. Verse 6. For I will set mine eyes upon them for good, and I will bring them again to this land, and I will build them and not pull them down, and I will plant them and not pluck them up. And I will give them a heart to know me, and I am the Lord, and they shall be my people, and I will be their power. For they shall return unto me with their whole heart. All right? So see, all of when we talk about the Babylonian captivity, this was not a captivity of torture, pain, misery, not like the Assyrian captivity. It was much, much different. There's a young scribe at right about this point now who gives an understanding of the word. And he's going to bring some doctrines that people maybe not even understand at this point. And I'm going to show you who that young scribe is. Later. Alright? So they were also married. The only thing that they could not do is they could not be sacrificed. They could not be sacrificed like they do exactly for reason. They were still allowed to do the fast, but they were not allowed to do any animal sacrifice. Okay? So it is clear, and we're going to go back to Psalm number 7. We're going to go over it too. Okay? We're going to see this in Psalm. Start at verse 2, and we're just going to finish the rest of the chapter. Let's do that. Psalm 137, verse 2. We named our hearts upon the willows in the midst thereof. For there are they that carried us away captive, required of us a song. And they that waited us required of us mirth, saying, sing us one of the songs of Zion. How shall we sing the Lord's song in a strange land? If I forget you, O Jerusalem, let my right hand forget my tongue. If I do not remember thee, let my tongue cleave to the roof of my mouth. If I prefer not Jerusalem above my chief joy. Remember, O Lord, the children of Edom in the day of Jerusalem. He said racist, even to the foundation thereof. O daughter of Babylon, who art to be destroyed? Happy shall he be that rewardeth thee as thou hast served us. Happy shall he be that taketh and daggeth thy little ones against the stone. Isaiah talked about Israel degradation as a result of her exile. Right? Let's read Isaiah 41 and 14. Yeah. So, the ones that was not reproducing before, were they like everything is going bad for them? Or,
Well, you said it. Well, that's a farm, there's nothing about land.
those are the farmers like to buy land, those are the ones that take captive into Babylon.
Oh, okay.
The ones who were left to Jerusalem, I don't understand the question. But you know, some were taken into Babylon. Those were, Israel, the ones in the position, right? So the ones that were left in Jerusalem were in what Jerusalem that we destroyed. Right. So the ones that after the destruction of Jerusalem, the ones that were still in Jerusalem, how was our state religion? Like it was just completely bad, it was mistaken, stuff like that. Well, they had a revolt. They were still doing evil. They were still doing evil, even after the fact that Babylon destroyed Jerusalem. They were still doing evil because Nebuchadnezzar set Jeremiah over them as a government, and they weren't listening to him. They were still in the government. You read about God's country? If you read about, people read about was after Nebuchadnezzar. That movement is going on. So it's like if you learn about it, you could see that. What it is, he took a lot of pictures and said the rest of the day. Oh, right. Just because it's like a TV, and Isaiah 41. Read that. Isaiah chapter 41, verse 14. Fear not, thou worm Jacob, and ye men of Israel. I will help thee, saith the Lord, and thy Redeemer, the Holy One of Israel. All right, so now Isaiah starts to speak about the suffering and the chains and bondage. And we'll go Isaiah 42. Understand this. Isaiah was long dead when we were in captivity in Babylon. Isaiah was prophesying about the Babylonian captivity. Isaiah did not live during the Babylonian captivity. Isaiah was not alive when the Assyrian captivity. Isaiah was alive before the Assyrian captivity. No, that's that. Isaiah was not alive before the Assyrian. Isaiah was alive before the Babylonian captivity because he spoke it at the time. So Isaiah was alive from the beginning of the Assyrian captivity to the end of the Assyrian captivity. Yes. So even if you talked about the prophecy and punishment, that's the truth. Isaiah 42, we're going to read verse 20 to 24. Isaiah 42, verses 20 to 24. Isaiah chapter 42, verse 20. Did many things, and thou observest not. Opening the ears, but he heareth not. The Lord is well pleased for his righteousness' sake.
He will magnify the law and make it honorable. But this is for people robbed and spoiled. They are all of them snared and hold, and they are hid in prison house. They are for a prey and none delivered, for a spoil and none said restore. Verse 23. Who among you will give ear to this? Who will hearken and hear for the time to come? Who gave Jacob for a spoil and Israel to the bondage? Is not the Lord. He against whom we have sinned, for they will not walk in his ways. Neither were they obedient unto his law. Rather were they obedient to his law. So these sufferings are not to be unto the mentally. Right? Rather than they represent the condition of the homeless, the servitude in foreign land. So meanwhile, the pagans and the idolaters fulfilling and the fall of Jerusalem, and is temple as evidence of a higher teaching of Israel's power. And that's what they did. So they took the captivity of Babylon for those in the surrounding countries, Moab, Ammon, those people. And they saw that as a reflection of a higher wisdom, even though they did not know that a higher wisdom had a chance to come against the wisdom. What about religion in captivity? Ezekiel preached to the elders of Judea while they were in exile. And many of the people who were in exile they started living a comfortable life in Babylon. And they started to feel comfortable with the Babylonian society. Yeah.
You know how he was gifted by Rock or whatever? Like he had a weakness and something happened. He would have his I don't know what to talk about, but he had a weakness. His right child thinks the most high weakness, like the other one is everybody responds to other guys for weakness.
Oh, your God is this and that, and my God is strong. They all did that. They all thought that the most high had weakness. Because they would see Israel's sin and nothing to be done about it. Then the big thing happened, Israel, because Israel's sin. Outside countries is coming. Prior to the human captivity, there was no captivity from the time of the judges up until Assyria. That's what many countries of years. So every person thought that their God was strong and that the other person's God was weak. It's been like that. I didn't think of that. Ezekiel denounced men as a rebellious power. Part of the book by Isaiah was written during exile time, likewise expressed concern over the adoption of the Babylonian tradition. Until Isaiah 65:3, because there were certain people who took toward Babylon and the Babylon way of living. But then there were some people who maintained their faith. And others responded to whatever prophetic message that was given. Let's see Isaiah 65:3. Isaiah chapter 65, verse 3. A people that provoketh me to anger continually to my face, that sacrifices in gardens and burns incense upon altars of praise.
But if you can a little bit of the because there were people who listened to the counsel, who responded to the preachings of Ezekiel, the preachings of Daniel, right? Ezekiel 33 and 31.
Ezekiel chapter 33, verse 31. And they come unto thee as the people come, and they sit before thee as my people, and they hear thy word, but they will not do them. For with their mouth they speak much love, but their heart goeth after their covetousness.
Alright, since the temple was neither available sacrifices or celebration, solemn days or holy days would in prayer would commemorate Jerusalem's fall. Let's see that in Zechariah 7. Zechariah chapter 7, verse 3 through 5, and Zechariah 8 and 19. Zechariah 7, 3 through 5, and Zechariah 8 and 19. Alright, let's read.
Zechariah chapter 7, verse 3. And to speak unto the priests which were in the house of the Lord of hosts, and to the prophets, saying, Should I read in the 5th month, separate myself, as I have done these so many years? Then came the word of the Lord of hosts unto me, saying, Speak unto all the people of the land, and to the priests, saying, When ye fasted and mourned in the 5th and 7th month, even those 70 years, did yet all fast unto the
Listen to me. He said, those 70 years will be fasted and more in the 5th and the 7th month. Fast unto me, you all know what the 7th month is, right? You know the holy days are in the 7th month. What are they?
I know you said that.
Some small feast days, so there it is. The memorial was one trumpet, the trumpet, and also fall, the fall of the one of the Lord's trumpet is not a feast day.
What is the sacrifice?
That is not different. Correct. Correct. What was the holy days during that month? Tabernacle. No, it says feast day. Trumpet is not a feast day. But all holy days is a feast day. The Day of Atonement is a feast day. Some Israelites do eat and they have a celebration of Day of Atonement. They're going to go to you read verse 5, that's what it is. Go to Zechariah 8, verse 6.
Zechariah chapter 8, verse 19. Thus saith the Lord of hosts, the fast of the 4th month, and the fast of the 5th month, 5th, and the fast of the 7th, and the fast of the 10th, shall be to the house of Judah joy and gladness, and cheerful feast. Therefore love the truth and peace.
Love the truth and peace. The Sabbath took on a new emphasis at the same of the template and prayer, sacred rest. Circumcision also grew in the significance of the special reference to Israelites in the wisdom of foreign land. Or we're going to go through another top. In response to those who feel that the sins of the father will be visited upon the son for generations. Remember that? Let's read Deuteronomy 5 and 5.
Deuteronomy chapter 5, verse 5. I stood between the Lord and you at that time, to see the word of the Lord, when you were afraid by reason of the fire, and went not up into the mount, saying,
All right. So let's go over to Ezekiel 19. Ezekiel 19, we're going to read verses 1 through 9.
Ezekiel chapter 19, verse 1. Moreover, take thou up a lamentation for the princes of Israel, and say, what is thy mother? A lioness? She lay down among lions. She nourished her whelp among young lions. And she brought up one of her whelps. It became a young lion, and it learned to catch the prey. It devoured men. The nations also heard of him. He was taken in their pit, and they brought him with chains unto the land of Egypt. Now, when she saw that she had waited, and her hope was lost, then she took another of her wealth, and made it.
Read verse 5 to the top.
Ezekiel chapter 19, verse 5. Now when she saw that she had waited, and her hope was lost, then she took another of her wealth, and made him a young lion. And he went up and down among the lions. He became a young lion, and learned to catch the prey, and devoured men. And he used their desolate palaces, and he laid waste their cities, and the land was desolate. And the fullness thereof by the noise of his roaring. Then the nations set against him on every side from the top, and spread their net over him. He was taken in their pit.
All right, so let's go through Ezekiel. Preaching to the people about Babylon, about the captivity. Read verse 9.
And they put him in war and chains, and brought him to the king of Babylon. They brought him into hold, that his voice is no more be heard upon the mountains of Israel.
No more of the voices will be heard in Israel. Right? This is a terrible thing. That is real bad. Read verse 10.
Verse 10. Thy mother is like a vine in thy blood, planted by the water. She was fruitful and full of branches by reason of this water.
So Isaiah, Isaiah, meanwhile, expanded on the concept of the Most High, special blessing on Israel to include the eventual restitution of Ohio, even by the Gentiles. So all of this is going on while they were in captivity in Babylon. They still were praying, they still doing certain things. They just could not be sacrificed. Isaiah 49 and 22.
Isaiah chapter 49, verse 22. Thus saith the Lord power, behold, I will lift up my hand to the Gentiles, and set up my standard to the people. And they shall bring thy sons in their arms, and thy daughters shall be carried upon their shoulders.
Right. All right. So the book of Deuteronomy was being read by a particular scribe. And this particular scribe was really young at this time. And he started to read the book of Deuteronomy, and he came up with these concepts. The first concept that he came up with is that the concept of Satan as the Most High adversary. At that point, they did not have that concept in mind that Satan was the Most High adversary. The second thing that he came up with, the idea of an angelic hierarchy under the Most High, rather than the more ancient idea of an ascensive God with a higher and supreme being. Basically, that all other gods are higher than the supreme God, and we hit on each other money. That was a lie that was on stop. He also said the idea of absolute monotheism as opposed to the idea that a higher was the special power of Israel, but not the only power. Right? He also came up with the main idea of universalism that not only the Israelites, but all people must honor and recognize. Now, those four concepts are any one of those four concepts wrong? Well, we just read it. It's not hypothetical question. Those of you on the chat, you're going to start off. The four concepts that we just read are any one of them incorrect? He said the absolute monotheism as opposed to the idea that Ohio was the special power of Israel, but not necessarily the only power. He was opposed to that. Or against what was being taught. He's not running all four of them. Do I have to read them again? Let me read them again. Number one, this young class says that the concept of Satan as the most common advocate. Number two, the idea of angelic hierarchy under the Most High rather than the more ancient idea of the Trinity of God with a higher as the supreme deity. Number three, the idea of absolute monotheism as opposed to the idea that a higher was the special power of Israel, but not necessarily the only power. And the fourth thing he said, the related idea of universalism, that not only the Israelites, but all people must honor the Most High. Okay? Yeah. Well, one is the concept of Satan is the anti-God. Oh, okay. I didn't this started and this is when he started to preach, when he started to prophesy, he started to do that towards the end of the Babylonian captivity. And we're going to learn more about that when we do the praise. Okay? Daniel 9. Daniel 9 is interesting because we have 7 years of the prophecy of Jeremiah. Daniel 9, Daniel 9 is the time when the Israelite people were being captivity in Babylon. Daniel 9 contains 2 important prophecies. The first lasted for 70 years, and the second covered the 70 weeks. We're not going to go into the 70 weeks, we're going to talk about the 70 years. Let's see Daniel chapter 9, verses 1 and 2. We'll keep the Bible in Daniel in our chapter. Daniel 9, verses 1 and 2. So that all of them know? Yes. I would be better known on the side of Israel because he was in the power of fear without fear. Well, no, what I said was that Ezra started to teach that Higher was the only power, and not Higher being the God of Israel only. We had fifth guy, you had a fat guy. He was teaching like the highest on our kids. Later on, going to the Daniel chapter 9, verse 1. In the first year of Darius, the son of Ahasuerus, of the seed of the Medes, was made king over the realm of the Chaldees. In the first year of his reign, I, Daniel, understood by books the number of the years, whereof the word of the Lord came to Jeremiah the prophet, that he would accomplish 70 years in the desolations of Jerusalem. Because the very reference to the book is a reference to the prophecy that the Most High gave to Jeremiah. The prophecy Daniel was talking about was one given to Jeremiah past. Which was right before the Babylonian invasion. Let's go back to Jeremiah 25. And we're going to read verses 1 to 11. Alright, Jeremiah 25. And we're going to start at verse 1. We're going to read verses 1 through 11. Jeremiah chapter 25, verse 1. The word that came to Jeremiah concerning all the people of Judah in the 40th year of Jehoiakim, the son of Josiah, king of Judah. That was in the first year of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon. To which Jeremiah the prophet spake unto all the people of Judah and to all the inhabitants of Jerusalem, saying, from the 13th year of Josiah, the son of Ammon, king of Judah, even unto this day, that is the 3 and 20th year, the word of the Lord has come unto me, and I have spoken unto you, rising early and speaking, and ye have not hearkened. 23 years. This is pretty short. 23 years. They're not good. Verse 4. And the Lord hath sent unto you all his servants to prophets, rising early and sending them. But ye have not hearkened them, nor inclined your ears to me. They said, turn ye again now, everyone from the evil ways, and from the evil of your doing, and dwell in the land that the Lord hath given unto you and to your fathers forever and ever. And go not after other gods to serve them, and to worship them, and to boast not to anger with the works of your hands. And I will do you no hurt. Yet ye have not hearkened unto me, saith the Lord, that ye might provoke me to anger with the works of your hands to your own hurt. Verse 11. And this whole land shall be a desolation, and astonishment, and these nations shall serve the king of Babylon 70 years. Hold that place. Go to Jeremiah 29. We're going to start at verse 1. We're going to verse 1 and 2. Sit down at verse 6 to 8. And then verse 10. Okay. Jeremiah chapter 29, verse 1. Now these are the words of the letter that Jeremiah the prophet spake unto Jerusalem, and to the residue of the elders, carried away captive, and to the priests, and to the prophets, and to all the people whom Nebuchadnezzar had carried away captive from Jerusalem to Babylon. After that, Jeconiah the king, and the queen, and the eunuchs, the princes of Judah and Jerusalem, and the prophetess and the smiths, who departed from Jerusalem. Verse 6. Take ye wives and beget sons and daughters, and take wives for your sons, and give your daughters to others.
and they may bear sons and daughters, and he may be a priest there and not diminished. That's what you were giving in commandments. So the Most High says through Jeremiah, command to those captives in Babylon, that's what you're supposed to do. Keep going. And you keep the reading of the city where I have charged you to be carried away captive. And pray unto the Lord for it, for in the peace thereof shall ye have peace. But us say, Lord of hosts, the power of Israel. Let not your prophets and your diviners that be in the midst of you deceive you. Not the heart of your dreams will be caused to be Jews. Verse 10. So thus says the Lord, that after 70 years be accomplished as outlined, I will see and perform my good word towards you, and cause you to return to this place. Has anybody ever asked why 7 years? Anybody ever read this verse before? And have you ever asked yourself why 7 years? Alright, let's find out. Because you should ask questions when you read the Bible. The first one is, why did we choose 70 years? Right? And so back to Jeremiah 25, and let's read verses 3 and 4. Let's find out why the Most High keeps 70 years. A lot of people say, the other is, right? You know, it has nothing to do with that. Jeremiah 25, and let's read verse 3 and 4. Jeremiah chapter 25, verse 3. From the 13th year of Josiah, the son of Ammon, king of Judah, even unto this day, that is the 3 and 20th year, the word of the Lord has come unto me, and I have spoken unto you, rising early and speaking, but ye have not hearkened. And the Lord has sent unto you all his servants the prophets, rising early and sending them, but ye have not hearkened, nor inclined your ears to them. We would sin include evil doing and idolatry, right? So let's sit down to verse 6 and 7. Verse 6. And go not after other gods to serve them, and to worship them, and propose not to enter with the work of your hands, and I will give you your hurt. Yet ye have not hearkened unto me, saith the Lord. And you might provoke you to enter with the work of your hands to your own heart, own hurt. So, the 30 years of Christ, the Most High has chosen this time period that the number of years coincides with the number of violations the people of Judah of the Most High's command had that man should rest every 7 years. Right? Let's go to Leviticus 25, and we're going to read verses 1 through 7. That 30 years of punishment, man chose that time frame because the 70 years, the number of years coincides with the number of violations by the people of Judah, and the command that the Most High said the land to rest every 7 years.
So that was all the captivity programs, or was it just for that?
Good. Leviticus 25 and verse 1. Leviticus chapter 25, verse 1. And the Lord spake unto Moses in Mount Sinai, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, and say unto them, when you come into the land I give you, then shall the land keep a Sabbath unto the Lord. The land keeps a Sabbath unto the Lord. Come on. 6 years thou shalt sow thy field, in 6 years thou shalt prune thy vineyard, and gather the fruit thereof. But in the 7th year shall be Sabbath of rest unto the spring, a Sabbath for the Lord. Thou shalt neither sow thy field nor prune thy vineyard. That which groweth of its own accord of thy thy harvest, thou shalt not reap. Neither gather the grapes of thy vine unjust, for it is a year of rest unto the land.
So even if the land produces fruit, you're not supposed to kill it.
Verse 6. And the Sabbath of the land shall be for you, for thee and for thy servant, and for thy name, and for thy hired servant, and for thy stranger that sojourneth with thee, and for thy town, and for the beast that are in thy land, shall all the enemies thereof be moved.
Right, okay? So Israel is not keeping the Sabbath. Like, you know, let's skip over the verse, to chapter 26. Leviticus 26. And we're going to read verses 33 to 35.
Leviticus chapter 26, verse 33. And I will scatter you among the heathen, and will draw out a sword after you, and your land shall be desolate, and your city waste. Then shall the land enjoy her Sabbath as long as it lies desolate, and ye be in your enemy's land. Even then shall the land rest and enjoy her Sabbath.
The Most High has something about this Sabbath. To keep the Sabbath. Not keeping the Sabbath result in huge punishment. It was more than just the idolatry and the fornication that they were doing. They were not keeping his Sabbath, which was a grievance to him. 35.
As long as it lies desolate, it shall rest, because it did not rest in your Sabbath, when you dwelt upon it.
Right? 7 years. Transgression happened. So now, Father is still out for 70 years. Second Chronicles 36, 20 and 21. And then let's do it in that. Second Chronicles 36, 20 and 21. And let's read.
Second Chronicles, chapter 36, verse 20. And them that had escaped from the sword carried him away to Babylon, where they were servants to him and his sons from the land of the kingdom of Persia. And to fulfill the words of the Lord by the mouth of Jeremiah, until the land had enjoyed the Sabbath. For as long as he lay desolate, he kept Sabbath to fulfill these glories came to you.
Now, where does the 70 years come from? The 70 years is the exact number of Sabbaths in 490 years. And that was from the time of Saul to the Babylonian captivity. That's how the Most High got 70 years. Because in those 70 years, every 7 years, you should have your Sabbath. Right. Yeah, we got to do it. We just got to do that. No, it's all out. During Saul's from the time Saul reigned up into the Babylonian captivity, 490 years. You take that 490 years, and you take the 7 out of those 490, you don't want to say. Daniel 1:21. So we're going to say that we keep the Sabbath. Really, the was the first king. And because the king was supposed to be the one to tell them that you're going to keep the Sabbath, they weren't doing it. So from Saul to Babylon was 490 years. And if you take 490, and you divide that by 7, because it's supposed to keep the Sabbath every 7 years, you're going to come up with 7. You should come up with 7.
So the lesson was to the scripture that's what I told you to learn on 7 years.
No, they don't have 7 years of rest for the land.
Oh, the land is for people on.
Correct. You know, Mr. Jerry, 121. I don't know why I got that in. Let's go Matthew 16, 1 through 3. So, you understand that Daniel lived in Babylon throughout the captivity of the 70 years. He lived through the fall of the Babylonian Empire and the rise of the Persian Empire. Another important lesson found in Daniel's response to the 7 years of Daniel in the book of Jeremiah. Daniel, through the study of the Most High's word, recognized where he was in the timeline with the prophecy of his side. And he admonished us to discern the time. Read Matthew 16 and 11.